Hello and welcome to another episode of Seddon and Laceys Comic Stash. And we are on a quest. A night quest. A quest that has taken pretty much a year.
It's taken almost as long for us to read as I think it took them to create. In fact, I think it probably took them less time to create than it took us to read.
Yes, we are back with Knightfall Part 2.
Yeah.
We did Knightfall 1 in our previous guides around this time last year. It is in the archives, just scroll down there.
Yeah, it's on the channel, and it was actually quite a chunky one, wasn't it? Because it's a big story, Knightfall.
Yeah.
And we swore that we would come back and we would do this, which is the middle part of the story, and then subsequently Night's End. Well, we might take a long time to deliver on our promises, but ta-da! We are questing finally.
We are. But before we go into our quest, we should go to our corners. Our dirty, evil reading corners.
Evil.
Happiness is just around the corner.
In my reading corner, there was a bit of a temptation here to start playing the violin and going, well,
Woe is me.
woe is me, and reading KnightQuest while doing all the vids and getting them up and ready for a Halloween period, which we release more in 1 week than we ever have before. And I'm glad big holidays are spread more out, because I think we'll probably do something akin to it around Christmas time. But I need a bit of gappage in between. But I did manage to get a very small bit read, and I'd spoken about this when I started it, I think about like 3 episodes ago. I did get round to finishing the second volume of Black Widow by Kelly Thompson as the writer, and I really enjoyed it. It is very much a kind of arc where it's setting up a new status quo for Widow. She's moved to a new place. She's almost started to take on a teen Widow, let's say, and of course I don't know where it goes, so I don't know where it goes after this, but that feels like what we're doing here. And you know, like Yelena Belova is very much getting integrated into it. You've got Spider Girl, and you've got a new character, and I'm not going to say the last 3 issues necessarily knocked my socks off, but it was of as good a standard as everything I found in this series so far, and it is really enjoyable. There is one scene in, I believe it was issue 8, and it's just an amazing moment where Black Widow jumps out of a really tall building, and she's given the parachute she had to someone else that she saved.
Yeah.
And kind of the other people who are parachuting down just kind of go, well, how is she going to survive? Because she hasn't got a parachute. And then you cut to like the next page, and they're all in the car together, driving off, because she did survive, and you don't really see it. And then one of the lasses turns to Yelena Belova and actually says, like, kind of jumping into that audience member mind of going, I don't get it, how did she survive? And she just went, don't ask, and they just moved on with it. And it just really, I just thought it was really smartly done, because it was almost, you know, that kind of nod and wink to the contrivances that sometimes you get in comic books, where that's probably a better way to deal with that than watching her do roly-polies and tumbles as if you could land from a big building, but they just needed to transition from one scene to another. But yeah, there's some smart, some funny writing in it, and I think for me, the characters are believable in a comic book fashion. You know, they don't feel like massively out of place. They don't feel totally alien, and it builds really nicely off the first volume, which is the one where she had been effectively brainwashed to the point where she thought she was married and had a child and things like that, and this kind of takes that story forward. But yeah, really enjoying it, and we'll definitely get on to the next volume at some point in the reading order. But yeah, very good. I would recommend it to anyone who is a Black Widow fan, or anyone who fancies sort of like a bit of a light espionage. It doesn't go too heavy into the espionage side of it, but yeah, an interesting read, and the art's beautiful.
How modern is this? Is this around the films, or?
This is current. Now, when I say current, I do think the series has been cancelled now. I think it was struggling with sales, so I think there probably is only 1 volume left. But like the collected volume was only published in October 2021, so we are looking at very, very recent.
So
Makes a
As
change as well, doesn't it?
I know.
For us
It's
to be doing something quite
quite,
recent.
quite modern for us.
Yeah.
So I hit it hard for Halloween after Halloween and decided that I was going to have a look at see what was on DC that was Halloweeny. And of course, I found some joy. So the first thing I read was Batman: The Legends of the Dark Knight Halloween special.
Oh, I didn't know there was one.
So this is a 3-part story. I don't know whether it's done as 3 issues, but it's got 3 chapters in it. And it is Batman, and it is Scarecrow, and it is fucking sinister. Very, very good. Very unique version of Scarecrow in it. That I haven't seen him drawn like that before in that sort of guise. Typical Scarecrow fare. He's using his fear toxin and being a menace to society in that way that he does. But yeah, this was very good.
Two quick things on this,
Yeah.
just as a bit of a comics history. So Legends of the Dark Knight, that the Batman series that this is from, that's the first Batman comic I ever bought. Not this one, but the first issue. That was the first ever Batman comic I bought off the stands. It had like a silhouette of the bat, and there were multiple different coloured covers. Like there was an orange one, there was a pink one, and things like that. But yeah, it's the first Batman comic I ever bought. And a creative team for this, same dudes as Long Halloween, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, which I didn't know this existed. And I'm gutted I didn't, but I will be adding this to my reading pile just for that alone.
Yeah. The other one of the 3 was Secrets of Sinister House, which is 8 shorts in the DC pantheon. There's a Batman one. There's a Green Lantern, Atom, and so it's that sort of collected shorts. The Batman one is fucking beautifully gruesome. Batman's a vampire, and
Obviously.
yeah, fucking it's so good. Yeah, this is one of those nice, easy to run through because each story's 8 to 10 pages. None of them are overly long. None of them they all fit really well. Unlike the Avengers one that we did for the Halloween special, where some of them just seemed either just thrown in or just went nowhere.
Again, apologies for that. There was a theme behind it. That's the only thing I'll say in my defence on that one.
But yeah, no, this does it better.
It's I've just looked it up and I haven't found the one you're talking about. But what I didn't realise, and maybe you, is that there was a Secrets of Sinister House series between 1972 and 1974, and it looks very much very like horror comics. So I'm guessing this is then revisiting that later of going, let's take that old product, that old name that we had, and shift that into the modern world and put the superheroes in it. So, so I love that. Love it when they're going to go back to a legacy series of something that they've done before.
Yeah, I feel that I may have to find some more of those. And lastly, issue number 1 of The Year of the Villain, The Joker. But the reason I picked this wasn't because it was the Joker. I know it's my usual go-to, but it's who the writer is. The writer is horror legend John Carpenter.
Is it really?
Yes.
See, I remember I was slightly out of comics reading at this point. I remembered, like, just before this, I've been getting a chunk of the DC stuff, and I remember the Year of the Villain thing was going to be the next big event, but I never got round to any of it, and because I was kind of dropping out a little bit at that time, I never really bothered to look up what it was about or who the creative teams were. But oh my god, like, that's right up my alley. See, there's another one I'm going to have to add to the list now.
Yes. So this is obviously about Joker, but it's not Joker's story. It is about one of his sidekicks, and this is amazing. And gives a real clever and sensitive's not probably the right word, but thoughtful look at mental health and how certain people may seem crazy, but they're not, they're just evil,
Yeah.
and other people are having mental breakdowns and
Yeah.
can't really control what they're doing. But yeah, get on this.
I'm going to add this on. Of course, the problem is, isn't it, is you add something like this on and then you go, what
And now
else
I'm
is
in the
there
rest of the
year
year of
villain?
it, yeah. It's one of those of I haven't done the thing of putting the whole run in my saved list yet, because that was a one and done just because it was John Carpenter and I was like, that fits my Halloween wanting to do bits.
Well,
but yeah.
made the greatest horror movie of all time, so why wouldn't he knock out a banger of a comic?
Yeah, so yes, that is definitely one not for the kids, but
Yeah, it linked in like it was a big event kind of coming off the Justice League run that was going at the time, and I wasn't so much feeling that Justice League run, so I'd kind of tapped out. I think maybe about 6-7 months before this, but yeah, as I do remember it, but I wasn't aware that he did it, and I'm just having a quick look now. Outside of the Justice League, there is like a Year of the Villain special. There's a Year of the Villain Hell Arisen limited series of 4 issues, and then for the one shots you've got the Joker one, Lex Luthor, Sinestro, the Riddler, Black Mask, Black Adam, Ocean Master, Harley Quinn, King Shazam, Scarab, the Commissioner, Deathbringer. So there's a lot of tie-ins. So yeah, probably not one. I think I might do what you did and do the single issue, and come back to that storyline at a later date if I ever go back to that era and actually do sort of that period of time.
I think
my God, it looks like from a tie-ins perspective, it looks like it tied into about 6 to 7 months of every bloody DC thing they were publishing at the time. So it's a
sounds
whopper.
about right.
Yeah.
Though what I might do is I might just hit the single ones up if they're standalones, because yeah, depending on who the writers are or stuff, that I might hit Harley and Riddler.
I was gonna say, I'll have a quick look at Harley for you. We'll do it live, even though we're not live. Writers, chap called Mark Russell, who off the top of my head, I can't think of anything that I've read or nothing that like particularly stands out for me. And the Riddler is Mark Russell again. So I'm guessing Mark Russell might have been the main writer for maybe the event. So yeah,
definitely we'll have a look at some of them. But yeah, the Joker one, yes.
Yeah, and it's nice, isn't it? Because we say on other stuff, comics is there for a vehicle of telling superhero villain stories, etc., 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 and they can be relatively generic if in certain people's hands. But the beauty of it is using these characters we know to tell something more personal, some deeper, some bigger message, but doing it under the guise of that. It's almost the fluff that gets you in the door, and then you get impacted by something a bit bigger and a bit more thoughtful. I'll go back to that again without having read it, but you know, thought-provoking probably rather than thoughtful, should I say.
But yeah, when you have read that, I definitely want to have a yak with you on that one.
Yeah. Wouldn't be like us to talk about a Batman or a Joker, but would it?
I know. Who would have thought we'd do such things?
We are creatures of habit.
So we will get into our quest, where when we last left the quest, Bruce was away with Selena looking for
Tim Drake's dad, wasn't it?
Yeah, Tim Drake's dad.
And I don't know why, I just have a real mental block on what his name is, and I feel like it's John, but I might have just made that up. So let's go with Tim Drake's dad.
Jean-Paul has taken the mantle of the Bat. He has defeated Bane.
Yeah.
And he is not accustomed to having the same restraints as Bruce
Well,
in
I
the
know,
bat mantle.
I know we can like push people and like yeah, watch our Nightfall one because we do go deep, don't we, into it? But certainly coming into this, I think it's fair to say we both enjoyed Nightfall, didn't we?
Well,
we
we both definitely enjoyed the first 3/4 of Knightfall.
yeah. It's not without its kind of issues, is it? But as much as it was a chunky story, a large part of it felt like there was a good story reason why it was so long, and we'd even said, hadn't we, at the end of that, of we go into the world of, like you just said there, we go into the world of Jean Paul as Batman, but as a different Batman than what we've seen before. And we said at the time, like, we felt that maybe, just maybe, that shouldn't have been in that story, and that feels like the next chapter starting. But of course, now we've gone into and read the next chapter. I'll be honest, I still feel like that end part, that almost that last quarter, should have been here rather than in Nightfall. But I think we were both ready, even though we waited a year. That might tell you something. We were kind of ready to see what happened next. But that little teaser, it's not a little teaser, but that teaser at the end, I think it put us both on the back foot a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah.
We were both a little bit like, oh, I'm a little bit less keen to go on now that I've seen
Bat metal.
this, yeah. And yeah. So with Batman here, we are, for anyone who hasn't read it, we said Jean Paul. So Jean Paul Valley has taken over the mantle, and to a large part, this is, well, to most of it, this is his story, isn't it? We're not getting Bruce back. We're not getting Bruce for most of this. This is a new Batman in a new world.
This is. We open with the first issue where we are introduced to Tad and Tom, the cowboy twins, who feel really out of place in what we've had up till this part. I fucking love them. I think they're fucking great, and they should be in Batman 66.
I'm kind of glad you said that, because I'm looking at my notes here, and I've put Tom and Tad. While shit, I love them.
Yeah. But yeah, they just seem really out of place in this story at this time. Yeah,
they're long lost kind of brothers who've both gravitated to being pretend cowboys and robbing people, haven't they?
Yeah.
It is a very, very odd, and you can always argue that loads of the Batman Rogues Gallery are odd, but it feels very odd when we've just come off of like a lot of stories with Scarecrow, Joker, even like Ventriloquist, Mad Hatter.
Bane,
the more darker
Firefly,
side, the darker and dangerous side of the villains. They go pew pew, so they have guns, but yes, you're right. They feel from a different age, a different era, and possibly feel a bit counterintuitive to that little bit we'd already seen of Jean Paul Bat. You know, that the darker Bat, or the more violent Bat, should I say, rather than the darker Bat. And now all of a sudden we've got two cowboys.
Yeah, so we said it in the last one that this vision of Batman and this bat suit that Jean Paul has could be in Spawn.
Yeah.
And then we're getting Batman 66 villains.
Yeah, and you know, look, this was made in the 90s, so it was very much around the time where the heroes were darker, anti-heroes were a thing, spiked suits were a thing, like more aggressive weaponry. You know, there's no shark repellent here.
Yeah.
There's batarangs that are designed to hurt and impale people rather than that. So yeah, it is a strange juxtaposition, but I did enjoy every panel they were on.
Yeah.
I was really interested in them. I really liked them. I'm not sure why though. Maybe it is the 66 vibe, but I liked them a lot. Sorry.
Yeah, they were great. We see that Batman had a troll dwarf working underneath the Batcave,
Yeah,
who was
yeah.
making a bat train.
Yeah, yeah. The
Um,
Bat Train.
yeah, we don't see said dwarf slash.
No, I
Or,
couldn't. I was trying to remember whether he was mentioned in the Nightfall or whether he comes from that Sword of Azrael series. I don't know, but yeah, I felt like I was supposed to know a bit about him, but I'd either forgotten or he was in one of the bits that we hadn't actually covered that wasn't
Yeah.
in any of the collected editions.
but yeah, so he has a bat train that can go 300 miles an hour on the subway.
How did we feel about the Bat Train?
Um, it makes sense that he would have some sort of thing that could work underground on this tube network that they have under Gotham. But at the same point, I wasn't a massive fan of it.
Well, I thought it looked shit.
Yes, it
And-
does look shit.
I hated it, but I'm kind of with you of going. I mean, he says it himself, doesn't he? Going, well, I don't want to drive everywhere. I want to get everywhere really fast, and this way I can get to anywhere in the city almost instantaneously. So I could kind of see the logic for it, but yeah, it just felt clunky. It looked horrible, and I'll be honest, it felt a little bit like it was getting too much attention. You know, I'm here to learn about Jean-Paul Bat and this new world, and I didn't really want extended focus on his train.
And his how it can somehow magically spin around to go the other way.
Yeah, and yeah, blast into reverse instantaneously. Like what? That felt not 66X-esque. That just felt badly written to me. It's just like, let's add some tension in here. Oh, I think he even says I've got like 2 seconds to do something.
Yeah.
And then like thinks for what would have taken a lot longer than 2 seconds before, yeah, instantaneously like reversing it. A strange story element to me, and something that I think mercifully, as much as it is used in all of this story, it is his primary way of travelling around. It probably never gets anywhere near the focus it gets in this initial bit. I do wonder whether they kind of went, yeah, that wasn't as cool as we thought it was going to be. We'll use it, but let's not focus on it ever again.
Yeah. We also see quite early that Jean-Paul is being a dick to Robin.
And
He
a
blocks
real,
up-
real meanie, isn't he? Like,
Yeah. Because he blocks up the Batcave, so Robin
Yeah.
can't get into the cave.
Excellent brickwork though.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't put up a wall at all. This guy, boom, perfect. Within minutes. Didn't even have to go to the shop and get bricks. Just knocked up a brick, bricked up the wall, perfect.
And closed off the Batcave to Gotham Manor
Yeah.
as well, because of course he does. But yeah, he's just like, I don't need an assistant. I don't need you. I don't want you. Go away, you little brat.
Yeah, a huge like rejection of anything connected to Bruce Bat and anything that I guess we'd always seen as something helpful. So like with the Wayne Manor, you know, not only was it bricking up, getting into Wayne Manor, but I almost kind of took that as I don't need an alter ego. I don't need those things that he had. I am the Bat, and that's all I am. But yeah, absolute dickbag.
And also we start seeing the spirits of Azrael's dad,
Yeah.
or Azrael, who John Paul been Azrael before this point.
Yeah, I think in the Sword of Azrael series, he either is or that's the point of it. He's supposed to be appointed as, and possibly his dad is in it. But I think that connectivity to Azrael is already there.
And then obviously the St. Demas as well.
And I think for me, one thing I will say throughout this whole collected edition, and I'll pick up on some of them as we go, there's a raft of different artists along the way because it's from different series, but it's the one thing that seemed to really have a consistent art style was when they did And I'm going like that because they were always kind of abounding above him.
Yeah.
Like, the spirits were kind of always raised above and talking at him. I don't know whether at this initial stage or throughout we are supposed to totally buy into that there are spirits talking to him, or whether we're supposed to be unsure as to whether spirits are speaking to him or whether this is all in his head and it's inner voices. But you know, they come back. So this is our introduction to them, but they are somewhat ever present throughout this story, aren't they?
Yeah, and I really don't like the way that they're drawn. I don't like the pink and yellow colour schemes on them. It takes it out for me, because I'm like, I get that they need to be different to what's going on, but when everything's going so edgy, to have these in, you know, what look like ice cream colours
I hadn't thought of that, but yes,
doesn't really sort of fit with what's going on.
Yeah, but I think you're probably right. I think probably that colour palette decision was based off of we're using blues, blacks, dark colours everywhere else. Oh shit, we better make it clear that there's something different to them. What other colours are there? They probably should have tried a few more, I think, before they settled on this combination. I mean, these first sort of two issues from Detective, aren't they? The 667, 668, where you kind of get this stuff, and it's written by Chuck Dixon, who has long patches of Batman, and I think to the most part, even though there are other writers on here, I think is if you were going to levy like Knightfall, and KnightQuest, I think he's kind of considered the architect of it, probably the main writer of it, and for art on these two issues, you've got Graham Nolan. Now, we'll come back to him because we do quite a few issues of Detective. I will say it was okay for me on an art side. I know what you're saying about that aesthetic of the colour, but I thought the art was all right here. But one of the nice things of seeing it over a run is certainly with Graham Nolan, his issues I think get better and better and better as the series goes on.
Yeah.
Some point later on, there's some not so great stuff, but yeah, it's not one I'd say I'd sell off the art. And of course, unfortunately, no matter how good the art is, they're still having to make that grotesque bat suit try and look good, and the bat train. So they're not helping the artist here, I don't think.
No. We then get our first big bad of the run, where we see the Tallyman, who I think looks fairly cool.
We slightly differed on this, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much that he didn't look cool, but you said it earlier about Spawn. This looks to me like a Spawn villain or a Spawn character. And
should be a hell demon.
Yeah, and I'm not kind of sure. So we're into Shadow the Bat now. So we've moved to a different artist, Vince Giorano, and I actually quite like his art style. He's one of the ones who stood out the most for me in this. But yeah, his art certainly leans to those stylings a little bit more. Like it's, and I guess maybe jarring coming off of Graham Nolan stuff, which is more like humans look like humans and things like that, to more of a horror leaning on the art. But yeah, I don't know whether he felt like, here we go again, going to use the term believable. He didn't feel like he was believable in this, and I didn't have quite the same love for it as I did Tom and Tad.
Yeah.
But similar feels to a degree of going, not sure whether I buy you in this story. But of course, we are trying to look at a more violent, darker Batman here, aren't we? So I guess it would make sense for, if you're going to introduce a new villain as part of the story, he should be darker, eerier, more violent.
Violent as fuck, yeah. He has a penchant for shooting the shit out of everything. You mentioning the art though, obviously as I said, I think Tallyman looks cool. The art for the rest of the stuff in this is a fucking struggle. The mob bosses at the party looks so out of place. Because it's one of the mob bosses having his birthday party and he's expecting a woman to come out of a cake.
Yeah.
And out comes Tallyman.
Tally!
And yeah, and it's just...
Yeah.
And the thing is, Tallyman looks so out of place with everything else that's going on, but everything else that's going on looks so out of place with everything else that we've had previously and we get later.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down one of the first things I wrote in this issue, even I think before we got to the Tallyman, I went, this feels like an artist for a horror comic, rather than necessarily what we've seen throughout this whole storyline and Knightfall. And I didn't hate it, but yeah, I'm with you. Like tonally, so different, and I think it didn't work so well on, as we say, the norms, but probably worked better with characters like Tallyman.
Yeah, we find out that mob bosses do love a double cross because there's
Triple,
lots
quadruple, yeah.
Yeah, they're all out to get at each other. Tallyman,
Which I guess that's something that we've seen in most mob fiction over the years,
Yeah.
isn't it? But yeah, you wouldn't condemn one of these a tenner, would you?
No.
Because they'd probably kill you rather than pay you back. That's the impression that they gave you.
Yeah. Batman and Tallyman have a scrap that goes over a couple of issues. Again, looks alright visually, but I think just seemed out of place.
Well, I thought like we had like Bats is very violent in this before even the Tallyman, isn't he? You know, he's not pulling any punches when he's taking down like thugs and mob guys and things like that. You know, leaning into that kind of darker, more aggressive Bat. So yeah, Tallyman is going to be a concept of a foil for this, but I'm not entirely sure what Tallyman's motivations are.
Someone had a debt and Tallyman collects.
But we do, and I know I'm jumping ahead to the next issue, but we do kind of get the Tallyman origin, don't we? Of a you know, a sad origin of someone who grew up in a household where his father had died owing money to the mob, and his mother couldn't get out of the debt, etc., etc. And the guy was quite violent to her, and then young Tallyman, Tally Boy, kills him, gets locked up, and then when he comes out, you find that tragic things have happened, like and as if like his quest had become to never let anyone be in debt or owe anyone, and I was just kind of,
Yeah.
I like the origin, but I'm not entirely sure I buy into the concept here.
Though we do get, after Batman takes down Tallyman, the mob boss is calling in another favour and bringing us the shiny killer, Murkos.
And again, another new one for this, wasn't it? Like
Yeah.
a new creation, not something that had been used out. It had been created purely for this run or this part of the story.
He is a super soldier that very much one of those, as like with Black Widow, sort of going back to when you're talking about what you've read for the corner, that whole secret agent hidden in plain sight, but if you say some magic words,
Yeah.
off you go and you've got yourself a killer.
Yeah.
But he controls himself by saying the words himself.
Yeah, it seemed like a flawed logic, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I will say, the bit where he goes into the mob compound, they do draw that pretty when he's going on a kill spree.
And also you have, again, sorry, I know I say again a lot, but really again on this one, you have a lot of leans into Bat's aggression, and then probably maybe to give you a juxtaposition to kind of still make you think he's a bit of a hero. That's why the villain is even more rough with the bad guys, maybe.
Yeah. These two then have their little tete-a-tete. Batman gets involved with one of the mob bosses to get them to turn on the mob to get information. But Murkoss is there to try and kill Batman with a sniper shot. But Batman moves and kills the mob, and he kills the mob boss instead. Then they go off and have a little scrap.
They do. There's a lot of that. There's a lot in my notes of, and then they have a scrap. That's a consistent note for me for these issues.
Yeah. This like everything so far, because they're obviously not using any established villains at this point.
Yeah.
It all feels a little bit, and here's the villain of the week.
Yeah, and you know, like with the Tallyman, that's it was Alan Grant who wrote that, and as I said, Giordano's the artist. So you kind of, I feel like they went, you go and play with Batman for 2 issues and create a new villain, and then like with this one, it's Doug Munch and Mike Manley, and I feel like with Murkoss, they said same sort of thing. You go and create a new villain because you know we want him to have his own cast of villains. So you know, knock it out of the park, lads, and. I don't think on either of these they did knock it out of the park. I'm with you. They feel like villain of the week fodder that I would care nout for seeing again.
Yeah. We do get our first look at a real villain as we see Joker in a Los Angeles
Yeah.
film studio trying to pitch a film.
It was a cool little teaser, wasn't it? It was a cool little bit of imagery, and I don't know whether it was cooler because it was nice to see that connectivity with some of Bats's past, or whether it was just because it's the Joker and it was just a grand idea. Over these, I mean, like kind of what we covered there is like 4 or 5 issues, and over that you're getting a lot of GCPD shots in there, isn't it? Like Harvey Bullock showing up and Commissioner Gordon and
Montoya.
Yeah, it was lovely to see early stage Montoya here to know what happens with Montoya later.
So we then get the randomly placed, but I guess it was because of when it was coming out that they had to do it, the Christmas special, which tells all of us the perils of being greedy consumers, buying stuff at Christmas in our Planet Feuds, because you will get mugged by criminals that will steal your shit.
Yeah. A hard lesson, but a fair lesson to us all, I think.
I mean, that was pretty much it, really, wasn't it, in that one?
Well, and you say like the Christmas special, I'd like to kind of get a little bit critical of it, but as we've talked earlier about Halloween specials, I do get it. You know, like they want to hawk some stuff around that time of year. So yeah, I do kind of get why they did it, and you know, like people have their stories to tell on it. But yeah, didn't really do anything exciting, did it?
No, it didn't really go anywhere or do anything. But we then get chucked into the Catwoman run as part of the story. We see Catwoman, the eco-terrorist. Weird to see her in purple.
I mean, that was the costume of the time, and it really
Yeah.
was. Before we get too far into weird to see her in purple, this is the start. This is Batman issue 503. So for anyone watching it, and I'll probably flash the covers up as we go through, but I have written down here in my notes the worst cover I have ever seen. It is.
I'm trying to think which one. Let me get to
atrocious.
my list, because obviously we covered them all on the.
Yeah. This is a Catwoman cover. And
Oh yes, yes, this one is
yeah.
fucking
I
dog shit.
imagine they were trying to go, let's do a sexy Catwoman cover. And weirdly enough, the art duties around some of the stuff that comes is quite a renowned artist for Catwoman. So I think when we get to the Catwoman issue, as much as the outfit, the costume is the same and had been for a very long time around that. But my God, like if I saw this on the shelf, I'd have pissed myself laughing and gone, why would I want to buy this? You've made her look really weird. And not even sexy bad girl. You've just made her look like a non-human being. It's so bad. I hope the picture does justice for me. How bad I thought it was.
Yeah, I don't think that one, with how shit it is very, very shit. I don't think it's the worst one.
There is one that comes up later that I also put down. This might be the competition for shit.
I think 504 is just as bad as 503, which is the one where she's on top of Batman with the gargoyles and the whip.
No, there's one later on in this run that doesn't have Catwoman on, which I think almost competes for worst. But maybe for me, it was because I'd seen the art of her by this time, so maybe that second cover, albeit maybe as bad, was less bad for me because I'd already settled with, God, we're getting this as art for this storyline.
Yeah.
You are right though, eco-warrior.
Yes.
But suspected eco-terrorist Catwoman.
This was where this picked up for me. I really liked this story arc, and put aside the shit covers, the actual art in them isn't awful. And it's showing Catwoman in that way of, you know, yes, I'm a thief, yes, I'm a cunt, but I'm doing it for the right reasons. I don't do it just for my own good. You know.
So this storyline runs over 3 issues, doesn't it? We get Batman 503, Batman 504, and then the culmination in Catwoman's solo series.
There's also, it starts in 6. So it starts in Catwoman 6, then goes into Batman 503, 504, and then Catwoman 7.
Sorry, my bad.
So it goes over the 4.
Yeah.
And yeah, this was a high point, especially as far as where we've got to so far.
So I also kind of agree on high point, but where I've distinguished it, I've gone the Catwoman issues, as in the ones from the Catwoman series, are a high point for me, and I've even written down here I'd consider and go, and I do remember that series coming out at the time. I do remember it being relatively well regarded and quite big, but I just didn't read it at the time, and I actually would consider going back and reading some of this Catwoman run because I liked her issues, and I know it's part of the same story, but I think there was a distinct different quality between the Doug Munch Batman issues and the Joe Duffy written Catwoman issues in this storyline.
Yeah. Also, the thing I really like about this, because obviously so far we've had the fact that Gordon realises that Bats isn't Bats.
Yeah, and he's getting pressure from the mayor, isn't he? The mayor is very much like this new Bats, why aren't you police as effective as this guy? And there's that kind of, no, like, we're law and order, we follow the rules, that's what we do, we're the police, whereas Batman is not following those rules.
Yeah, she knows that this isn't Bruce because, again, I'm not sure where we are in canon at this point, but obviously it has been done in the films because Batman Returns, and in other bits that Bruce and Selina know each other's alter egos.
Well, and I think
have a little bit of a thing, but
after we had those new villains, I think it was quite an interesting plot point to go, would people who have got more of an established, even villain-hero relationship, twig this? And yeah, she did, and rightfully so, because he fights different, he acts different. All of those things, like, not just like he's wearing different clothes. And yes, I did like the establishment of that. Now, not for the first time in my notes, or no, sorry, not for the last time in my notes, I've written, and I quote, Bats is a little bit of a sex pest in this.
Yes.
He's very much kind of the way that his thoughts are. So you've got the thought boxes there, and yeah, this sounds like it's written by a sex pest for a sex pest. And even as the story goes on, as we get later on, after he's kind of met her and done this thing, like he sounds even more sex pesty as the story goes on. When written by Chuck Dixon, that is. Like very much how he fixates on her, and it's almost like she's naughty, she's dirty, she's bad, but I want her and I shouldn't. And this. So as I say, I like the top and tail of it, but the middle of this I thought was really poor, and I think it's too long. This doesn't need this many issues. It's quite a simple story, and could be told in 1-2 issues max. And have the same impact, but without probably the need to really focus on how much of a weirdo this guy is when he thinks about women.
Yeah. No, I definitely think, it could have been shortened up a bit. But as I said, by this point so far, this was where it picked up a bit for me. And I was like, I don't know whether it was because it's villains that we know.
Yeah, could be, yeah. That familiarity and that we like seeing those villains, that we like those villains, don't we?
It was the first point where the villains were there to do something other than just be fodder.
Yeah. And we continue to get like St. Dumas and Azrael stuff kind of going on, and I think this is really the sort of stage where I'm not going to say too conflicted, but maybe a little bit more question about what his role is, and it might have come from the place of being a bit of a sex pest or misjudging what Catwoman's intentions are.
Yeah.
But almost second guessing a little bit of is he doing things right? Is he on the right path?
Yeah. Now.
And more Montoya as well in this story.
Yes, very much more Montoya. Now we get a wonderful 3-issue run, which of course, as soon as I saw the first page of it, my ears pricked up and a smile was on my face. We have Joker, the filmmaker.
I was going to say my first note is Joker time, but that's a little bit of a lie because I did put nice Halloween cover as well because it had the Frankenstein, Wolfman, the Mummy on it, didn't it?
Yeah, the Universal Monsters. Yeah. So Joker has told the film agents, I don't know what it be, that he is going to make a film, The Death of Batman. And it's a gonzo film, as he really is going to try and kill Batman.
Yeah.
It's
cool, isn't it? Because he's got like the studio exec and like an assistant and a secretary there, and like the assistant's kind of like no but scared, and the secretary's all like been doing secretary things. But the studio exec doesn't really care the fact that it's the Joker. He's just like, yeah, I'm down for this. We can make money out of this. And I love the fact that a scuzzbucket Hollywood exec would lean into this and go, yeah, I'm for this. How much money do you need? I think he's in a $10 million budget at first, isn't he?
And this is just awesome. Joker and his gonzo trying to film stuff with setting up the horror monsters to attack.
Yeah.
He then hires a school student to be the victim.
Well, now you say that. We don't know he hires her, do we? There's a reveal later on that he's hired her, but yes, you are right, he does. And I only clarify that because, yet again, sex pest Batman.
Yes.
Like, he rescues this college girl, doesn't he? And, like, as much as he's generally had this drive to kind of go after the villain, on this one, he seems quite enamoured with her, so he takes the time to take her back to her college dorm and place her in
Yeah.
her bed and linger a little bit too long over her, and I'm going, oh my, where
a
are
little
we
bit-
going with this story? Yeah,
It's a little bit rapey in it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, this whole sort of run. Yeah, I'm not gonna spoil loads of bits of it because you should read it just because how good it is. But it is just full of Joker cliches, film cliches, silly set pieces.
We get a fake Terminator, don't we? We get a fake
Yeah.
Leatherface.
Yeah.
The art's good on this as well. This is Graham Nolan again, and I think this is one of the better storylines of art. Now, I don't know whether, again, familiarity of the Joker, but I think his Joker looks really good.
Yeah.
And maybe that kind of playing with some movie characters and things like that. But yeah, this was some of the better art for me in the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah. I love the final act of this where it has 1940s old school Hollywood vibes
Yeah.
of the piano walkway up to a raised platform. The silly jokerness of the trap of if you don't play the right tune, it'll blow up.
Yeah.
So play the right tune, bats.
Yeah, I put old school Joker hijinks, and I loved
Yeah.
it. I did think it was really good. I think they captured Chuck Dixon captured Joker really well here, and I'd say when you get the reveal of Bats being betrayed by the college girl, even though he was being a bit weird anyway, it was quite an interesting, I guess, character turning point. Although I felt like he was returning of him almost going, no one is good.
Yeah.
You know, that real push of going, everyone in this horrible city is bad, but still it is my job to protect this city. So kind of leaning him back into being the ruthless bastard rather than the well-meaning sex pest.
Yeah, obviously he batters the fuck out of Joker.
Yeah.
So much so that the police are in there pretty much forcing him off him.
But you get some nice stuff there, don't you? Where Bullock is almost going, yeah, let him carry on. And it's Lieutenant, oh my God, why have I forgotten his name? Lieutenant TJ, is it? He's going, no, that's not what we're here for. And yeah, it was nice to see those voices of the other people considering whether this Batman is good or bad. And when I say good or bad for Gotham rather than necessarily a good or bad human being.
Yeah. Spoilers. This was my favourite part of the run.
And real spoilers for it as well. I did like the last page because again it lent into old school kind of Batman and Joker stuff, doesn't it? Where Joker is carted off in an ambulance to be seen to, but ultimately seen to in a prison hospital. But use your imaginations, or as you say, read the story to find out what actually happens with Joker. But yeah, really kind of smart, cool, but expected ending, but done in a way that it was really enjoyable.
Yeah. After this, we...
Oh, sorry, I was going to say,
Yes.
I know you said it's your favourite part of it. I do think it's really good, and I think it probably is a highlight of this story, but I still don't think it's great, because I think the Joker stuff is really, really good. I think a lot of the Jean-Paul stuff isn't.
Though, to be fair, most... For something that will go on a bit later on, most of the John Paul stuff isn't great.
Yeah. Well, I almost wish this story had been done in another time with maybe Bruce Batts or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it is a cut above a lot of the rest we're seeing. But yeah, unfortunately, some of the stuff of this story, of the Jean Paul story, of the St. Dumas stuff, all of that sort of stuff that's been going on, did drag it back a few steps for me, and it's a shame because I think there's a great story in this.
And him being a sex pest.
Yeah, that was quite problematic for me.
Yeah. So before we go into the next run of villainy, we see Jean-Paul basically in the middle of a spirit kickoff between St. Demas and Azrael on who is the correct deity.
Who's the right daddy? I wrote
Yeah.
down.
This was where the art style for the spirits, I was bored of it by now, and this was the one that really grated.
Bored is a good word to use as well, because I think I'm with you on this bit, and this is really where I think you'll start to hear me use the term bored a lot from this point onwards. But yeah, certainly on that, I was bored of this kind of, because I didn't feel like, other than a couple of moments, it had done a great deal. And actually, if it had just been those couple of moments that did something, it would have been far more interesting than the over and over again, same visual, same stuff that's being said. It rather than it made me feel like him being off conflicted, I just thought, God, I'd be well bored if I was him, listening to this shit over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. We do see the very evil, very dark, murdering cannibal loon, the abattoir.
Now, one of the things we said is there's some reading order stuff here, isn't there? Like, I was reading it on DC Universe, and you were reading it in the book, and I know there was certainly towards the end there were some discrepancies, but like when I had a quick look through it, I felt like we were kind of there or thereabouts. But I just wanted to check, like, by this point, had you read I think it was Shadow of the Bat 24, got written down here, the immigrant story?
Rosemary Baby.
Yeah.
Yes.
That I liked. That I thought was fine. I thought it was a good kind of singular issue that told a story well. And again, it was back to that Giordano art. And by this stage, I'm quite liking his art, but I'm liking it on stories like this. But as a standalone issue, and I know it's got bats in it and it's got that sort of stuff, but I quite like that as a singular part of the story. And I think I probably needed a bit more of a standalone story coming off the back of Joker stuff and before we go on to the run either. But yeah, I kind of just didn't want to pass it by without saying, yeah, I quite liked it. I thought this was quite good.
I just forgot to put a note down for it because it didn't fit into anything in the rest of the run.
Yeah, and again, maybe that's why I quite liked it, because
Yeah.
I did need maybe a palate cleanser at this point of something that felt just interesting. Although I did put, again, for the a large part of this storyline is Bats' conflict against someone who's an illegal immigrant. So effectively they've broken the law, but they come here to rescue their child, and the conflict. And as good as the story was, my closing note on it is I'm getting really sick of his conflict at this point.
Yeah. So yeah, as we were saying, we get the abattoir turns up. This got very dark very quickly. With him, his family members, so he could kill them and feast upon their essence to make him stronger. We also see around this point Corrosive Man.
By the way, before I know we come back to Abattoir, I know he's got more, but as a kind of, and I know it's hard because it's after the fact, but how did you feel about Abattoir and his debut or his kind of introduction?
I like the idea of having someone that evil as a villain. Not in a kooky way that a lot of the other villains are. He just is. He's very Dharma, and if you think around this time would have been when the Dharma trial, would have been happening. He fits in with the zeitgeist of Dharma at that time. So yeah, I like the idea of him. I just feel that how he's dealt in this story, he was on a bit of a hiding for nothing.
I mean, I went with Abattoir, meh. that's kind of how I felt about it. But I thought he might resonate a little bit more with you. And in this first part of the Abattoir story, I think the kind of the key bit for me, and oh yeah, the word conflict's coming up again. We get another bit of conflict of oh, actually maybe I should go a bit more Bruce Wayne-y and lean into the detective side, because that seemed to work for him, and so he does a bit of detecting in this issue. But by the end of the issue, he's like, detecting's bollocks, isn't it? And instead, what he decides is, because Abattoir escapes, but basically Bats gets a choice here, doesn't he? Save a load of kids from falling off a cliff, yeah, or stop the bad guy. And he makes a decision to save the kids, and I think, you know, like, effectively he says, I would make that decision again, but what I need to be is, my suit needs to be more dangerous, so that I wouldn't have to make that decision. So then he decides that he really wants to weaponize the cape. Yeah. And I'm like, oh god. Yeah. 90s tastic, I'm thinking at this point.
Yeah. Get Corrosive Man, Joe Public, and Ballistic for an issue, which just sort of just like, why? This was just very...
Joe Public was awful, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I put Corrosive Man, nice horror visuals. Brett Blevins is doing the art at this point, and it's Alan Grant writing again. And I quite a few years later, but probably, I say quite a few, 3 or 4 or 5 years later, Brett Blevins does some art on Stormwatch, and it is lovely, and it is very much like in that Image comic styles, and really, really good. I can't marry the art I know he does later to this, because I think, and I'll do it now because we'll cover a few issues coming up with him as artist, I think his art is generally sloppy, bad, and some of the worst art we get inside issues for the rest of this storyline, except for this issue. And as I say, I think when he was leaning more into like the horror-y, Corrosive Man look, that was okay. And so yeah, so I've gone some nice horror visuals and design, less so on Joe Public. Shit name as well is the note I wrote down at this point.
Yeah, this issue was just pretty pointless.
So the only thing I thought gave this any merit is Joe Public's power is to absorb powers from others, isn't he? So if he's in a room full of 10 human beings, he could absorb the strength of those 10 human beings to make him as strong as 10 humans. And Bats takes a bit of a shoeing in this, doesn't he? Because Corrosive Man's corrosive, so he's damaging his arm and things like that. And you see this side of Jean-Paul that I guess you haven't seen before because he's actually working with someone. But how he kind of gets the upper hand is he makes Joe Public absorb Corrosive Man's power, which is clearly causing Joe Public pain. But Bats is kind of like, suck it up, dude. Like, we need to take this down. And I felt like, yeah, it was the only sort of key bit of going, he will sacrifice others, not kill them, but sacrifice others for the greater good. So that was the only point of interest that I think come out of this for me.
Yeah. We then have Hawk and Bunny. Again.
Yeah, this is a low point for me.
The gun nuts.
Thank God you said it, because in my notes I wrote gun nut issue.
Well, I actually put it down as gun wankers.
Well, yeah, but yeah, I went gun nuts. But
yeah, these two are just like, yeah, he's a sniper, well done. And now he wants to go and steal the mega gun.
Yeah, and you know, like full of gun magazines and gun calendars with like the woman holding the guns. And I know it's something that vibed very much with America, and I'm not entirely sure after reading this part, and it's Chuck Dixon again, of whether Chuck Dixon is pro guns or anti guns, but this was guns.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah, that's how it felt to me. And again, with little or no purpose to it. I mean, I know like Bats takes a bit of a drilling with bullets, doesn't he? Where his suit gets damaged again, and I think there's a moment in here where he kind of goes, "Oh, must upgrade the suit again and again and again." And yeah, I just 90s tastic again, not in a good way.
Yeah. Remember when I said I read the Hawkeye, or not Hawkeye's,
Peacemaker.
Peacemaker
Yeah.
from like the late 80s? This would have fit in there, and even visually looked like something 5 years earlier, to that level of look at me and my guns.
Yeah.
At the
And they
same
were just
point,
shit villains as well, weren't they?
Yeah.
They weren't. I mean, they were just. What's the point?
so at this point, Batman has the abattoir on the loose. He's got Hawk and Bunny on the loose. So what do we need? We need 2 issues with Clayface the Third and Mrs. Clayface, because we don't have enough villains
Lady
intertwining into
Clayface, wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah, entwining into each other as it is.
I saw the title of it and the cover where it said Clay, and I thought, oh, we're getting a Clayface. Let's see what they can do with Clayface, because I think there's some good Clayface stories and some bad Clayface stories. But I was actually quite perked up. I was on a bit of a low when I got to this, and I thought, oh, this might bring me back up a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Lady Clayface is. We see her fighting Batman. So she obviously can do what all good Clayfaces can do, and absorb and shapeshift into different things. So she turns into a weird sort of gargoyle.
Yeah.
Because she is on a order from the abattoir to take down the Bat. We see Clayface the Third, who can't transform into things, but just super kills with one touch.
Yeah, he's got like in his state, he's in. I'm gonna say constant pain, but pain that gets worse and worse, doesn't it, over time? And the only way to take away that pain is to basically kill people. You know, he almost transfers some of that problem to the human being that he's touching, and it effectively melts them into naught, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And he can't touch anyone because of this, which is a key part to the story and a worrying part to the story for me. So I know these are villains. I know there are villains who have, well, we have had it recently established in the recap that they're in love, but they've kind of taken themselves away from the world, haven't they? Because they don't want to do bad things anymore. Yeah. However, because Clayface the Third is in so much pain, he sneaks out to kill a random stranger. And like Lady Clayface comes along and sort of he goes, "Oh, don't look at me! I'm so sorry. I just killed someone." And she went, not her words, but how I read it of, "Well, brilliant. We can get it on." So caught murdering, and she's like, "Well, thank God for that. At least we can bang."
I want a baby.
Yeah, that magical bang, yes, leads to pregnant Clayface.
And Abattoir stealing baby Clayface.
So when they're discussing do they want it to be a boy or a girl, you know, like you can kind of go, well, it's going to be Clay, be whatever you want. But there is one moment, one pure single moment I like from this storyline, and that is the, what should we call the baby? And the answer, Cassius, for Cassius Clay. And I actually did think that was legitimately funny in the context of what it was.
Yeah.
But if that's my highlight from this storyline, then I think it kind of indicates as to what I think of it. But yeah, you're right. Abattoir kind of randomly happens along them and steals the weird Clay baby.
And Batman takes down both of them and saves the baby, gives the baby back to Clayface the Third. The abattoir gets away. We also find out that during this time, the abattoir is torturing his cousin, and on a bed of nails where he is dropping weights on him slowly, because the more he suffers in slow pain, the tastier he is.
Well, there is a part there as well, isn't there, at the end where he rescues the baby, as you say, and he actually makes a decision again, much like the bus of kids. He goes, he could either go after Abattoir, or he could save the baby, and he saves the baby. So there is something there of the hero, but Clayface is kind of give me my baby and we'll go. And he is like, no, you ain't going anywhere, son. Like, you are going to prison. I've saved your baby, but you've murdered people. And I don't know, like, leans into trying to give him some characteristics, but that have been done so many times in the 20 issues before this that it felt like, God, I don't need this. I'm not an idiot. You're just hammering this shit home now.
Yeah. We then see Abattoir getting chased down by the Bat. Robin makes an appearance because all the way through he's had his little moments where he's trying to be helpful, but Jean-Paul keeps telling him to fuck off.
Driving in a terrible car that's introduced in this storyline as well. He gets a car early. One of the reasons why he goes to the Batcave early, isn't it? Is he kind of gets the key to the car that Bruce had always promised him he could use the, let's say, Robin Mobile. And oh my God, it looks awful. It's worse than the Bat Train. Yeah,
it is not pretty. We see the Abattoir in the factory. He is, after a scrap, in a life and death situation where
the
very
Bat
old school, could
isn't it?
save it or not.
Hanging over like a boiling vat of liquid that would presumably be his death.
Yeah.
A very, very old school movie, old school comic book moment.
Bats doesn't help him, but doesn't kill him.
Yeah.
But he lets him die, which...
Yeah, he walks away, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He kind of makes that conscious decision of going, I'm not going to kill him, but also I'm not going to help someone who is inherently evil. And then he plummets in, doesn't he? But Robin sees some of this, and I guess what he sees is more effectively a more black and white version is of going, no, Bats killed him because he didn't save him.
Obviously, more conflict, because we have to have more conflict.
This time I changed the word from conflict to he had a breakdown in the cave, because it does lean more into that, doesn't it? Like, you kind of see him in the suit, masked off. Like, for a lot of this, he was like, but a lot of this whole storyline, you don't see him out of the suit, do you?
No.
Whereas I think this is, again, the first time where the helmet is off for a considerable period and he's crying, and he's gone off the deep end a bit here, rather than just going, oh, what do them up there say to me? Like he's got that conflict in himself, but more of a breakdown than anything else.
And also, this is the point where Gordon really starts to question it, because the Bats never lets anyone die.
Yeah.
We then have him take down Hawk, who is in his gun-filled craze, taking over a hospital because Bunny got shot and needs surgery. We get your typical hospital / any sort of facility where there's hostages scrap, where they go up multiple floors.
It was a long scrap as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I would say that probably 75% of this issue is this scrap, and obviously not a fan of the characters here, but this didn't feel like the character to have this long scrap with.
No.
They might have had the location right, but yeah, I didn't buy into it. Like, this is super hardcore Bats here. Like, he ain't fighting this guy for 16 pages of a 22-page comic book. He'd have done him in seconds.
Yeah, and just because he's got a mega gun,
which he rarely used. Like, it wasn't really effective at all, was it?
No. So he takes down Hawk, doesn't kill him, because we can't have him killing anyone else. We then go into the last issue, which is our first Robin issue.
See, I've got about 7 issues extra here.
Unless I just didn't write any notes from them, I'm pretty sure.
So I've got the Commissioner Gordon kind of, let's say, special Shadow of the Bat 28, which is a primary focus is a conversation between Jean-Paul and Gordon,
Yes.
where they
And-
kind of have their revelation, let's say. And I don't think it's like necessarily a revelation, but I didn't mind that issue because I thought it was something that if we hadn't have had so much meted out so clunkily, if this had been a 10 issue story and this had been one of the issues, I think it would have been quite impactful because it was very interesting to see them actually have a conversation about their different views and their different theories on this. And the art was awful, unfortunately for it, but I think the actual writing was well done, and I liked that.
Yeah, I do think the Shadow of the Bat run as a whole has not got good art.
Yeah, and again, it's all that Brett Blevins, and it's a shame because he does turn into a good artist, but I think it has some of the stronger writing issues, but some of the worst art issues. Now, the reason why I might have this slightly different is we haven't covered the Search storyline. Was the Search storyline not in the collected edition?
No.
Okay, so that's why I've got a few more issues because that was a chunk of story that I had that that kind of runs in between this, and like just for the purposes of this, that the Search is Bruce, so it's our Bruce Wayne story, and
Yeah,
I wonder.
so in the one that I have, the only bit of Bruce we get is the last issue, the Robin
Wow.
one, where he's already back and they're going to the airport to pick up.
So that must have made no sense to you then,
No, it
because
didn't.
last you saw him, he was, pretty much kind of wheelchair bound,
Yes.
and the next you see him, he isn't wheelchair bound.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, weird that it's not in the collection because, as I say, on the DC Universe Infinite, it is in there. Do you want me to tell you what happens?
Yeah, because I'm probably not going to go back to read it.
The worrying thing for me is it's 3 issues, so go back to some of the stuff we had from Knightfall. So he had there'd been that kind of start of the interest in Chandra, hadn't there? And he somehow inexplicably convinced himself that he loved her kind of off panel. I never felt that really was convincing for me, but yeah, in this storyline you find out that her name's Sandra. She's got a brother, and between her and her brother they have a power set, and they can hurt or heal people if they are in contact with each other. So let's say it's you. If the brother's kind of talking to her and saying, you don't like Chris, do you? You want to hurt him. And if she thinks about you being in pain, you'll be in pain and potentially up to dying. But on the same side, you could do that with healing. So bats in many disguises, including an excellent Englishman disguise with mutton chops, etc., 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 is kind of hunting it out. And eventually he goes there. They have a scrap, but of course he is not full bats at this point. He's kind of in the wheelchair, and they have a scrap, and ultimately what I think you're supposed to think on the page is Chandra uses the last of her energy and her life force to heal Batman. Now you do get a scene after that where you realise she isn't dead, she's just like lost her memory, and Bruce puts her in a really nice place, like a home for her to be looked after and stuff like that. But yeah, that's how Bats gets miraculously healed, and it is a miraculous heal. It was awful. It was so bad because it didn't feel like, and I know we get this in comic books where like the villain can be well hidden or you find out powers later, but this felt in no way connected to that Chandra storyline we'd had.
Yeah.
And it felt so, it was almost like we haven't really figured out how we're going to bring Bruce back. Oh shit, we've got 5 minutes. Let's
We
knock
need
this
Bruce
together.
back. Yeah.
And maybe I'm doing him a disservice here, but yeah, it was really bad. But yeah, I can't believe, because that must have been so weird. You went from So it was. We went from Batman. It's 675, isn't it? Which is the end of the gun nut one with the horrible cover of
Yeah.
what looked like Jetfire from the Transformers, as you say, into Robin 7, which is KnightQuest: A Conclusion. My God, that must have made no sense to you without that story that is rubbish but key to how we get from A to B.
Yeah, it was just, there's Bruce. I was like, okay.
Maybe they're just trying to pretend that other part never happened, and it's just better to have nothing.
Potentially. So we have Robin 7, where Bruce, as I said, is there to help Robin go pick up his dad.
Yeah.
Tells him that he can now drive and he can get the car, and he stays for dinner. They go back to the manor to try and go to the cave.
Although, sorry, a key thing like at the beginning of that issue is Bruce, as they go to pick up his dad, says, "Oh, you know what? I think I'm going to retire. You guys have got this." And you kind of have those moments where Tim Drake goes, "Oh, I think we need to have a conversation," and then his dad turns up, doesn't it? And so they don't.
Yeah.
Tim doesn't get to quite tell Bats that maybe things aren't so good or Bruce, sorry, aren't so good in Gotham. But then they have a little dinner, and then and then he takes him to Wayne Manor and says, "Well, this is a shithole now. He's killed someone." And I thought, why did we have that gap in between?
Yeah.
Why? Why are you extending out this stuff like as if you couldn't have just told him that earlier? But yeah, he does. He tells him that Jean-Paul is a bit of a dickbag.
And Bruce wants his job back, basically. John Paul says, "No, I'm the Batman."
I'm the Batman.
And Bruce says, "Well, fuck, I need to get training."
Well, John Paul kind of knocks him over, doesn't he? And he gets a little cut on his head, and then Robin has a car chase in his horrible car.
Oh shit! Yes.
In one of the
tried to
worst
forgive her
drawn
that,
Batmobiles I've ever seen, for loads of pages, and then he kind of loses him. But when I say loses him, he kind of skids out, doesn't he? Like near a lorry and all that jazz.
He's going the wrong way down a motorway.
But it was like 8 pages of a comic that never needed to exist. And yeah, then as you say, you kind of get this dun 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 moment where Bruce goes, "I'm going to get the Batmantle back, but I'm a bit out of practice. I need to go and see a master to get retrained."
Yeah. So obviously we don't know who the master is yet. We'll find out when we get to the end.
We do know the sex of the master, though, don't we?
Yes. So I'm going with it will be Tal.
That's my presumption, and again, without knowing, I can't see how it would be anyone but that.
Yeah.
Which, like, I know it's a dun 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 moment, and I think it lacks a lot of dun dun dun, but
Yes.
that bit kind of intrigued me. So it's like I haven't read a ton of issues with her in, so I'm quite interested to see a bit more of her.
Yeah. So we have gone through the quest.
We have gone through the quest. Before we talk about the whole kit and caboodle, I just wanted to, and I've got it here, just to remind me to flash it up, that the really other awful cover was...
It was in the back end.
It was Batman 507. And I've written down here, ropey cover that makes it just look like there's a new dude on the cover.
507. Which one was that?
It's
that one is pretty shit.
Yeah.
506 is also fucking terrible.
yeah.
In fact, lots of the covers for this are not good.
The early, so post the kind of big image boom, so post the Jim Lees of this world and like Rob Liefeld's, Todd McFarlane's, things like that, I would say there was because the comic industry was in a boom, there was a ton of comics being made, and most of the good artists weren't around, were they, available?
Yeah.
So I think probably art, with notable great exceptions, art in that early 90s to probably even the late 90s, there is just some piss poor stuff out there. And for what we now think of as their flagship comic. I mean, to be honest, you look at like the DC Universe weekly releases, and there's 95% of it is Batman or Batman related, and he was a big character back then. But to have this level of art on your flagship character, arguably Superman would have an argument in that, but let's be honest, your flagship character, it wasn't a good look, and especially on a storyline that I think is, in their head, one of the biggest for a long, long while. Art was pish through most of this.
Yes. So, overall, what are your thoughts on the quest?
I want to be fair and balanced, and I want to really give it some consideration, but I can't because it's shit. It's rubbish, and I hate doing that on this. You know, I said to you before, like this is our happy zone. This is where we're nice about everything. But we said like the Joker story, noticeably different. I quite like that immigrant story. There are small nuggets throughout this of things that I think are worthwhile. One of my biggest problems with it that makes it very, very poor to me is it is too long. For what it does, it is too long. And if the I'm loath to say it because I wasn't a big fan, but if the abattoir stories and the gun nut stories and things like that, if they were more singular, as in there was more of a story to tell about those characters and those characters are interesting, and they were just like filling issues like the Monster of the Week-esque things, I think I'd have enjoyed it more. But because everything had this lean of we better say he's conflicted, every time Robin's on there he better mention how Batman strangled him once, we better have the angel and demon on his shoulder, as I ended up thinking of him as of St. James and his dad, and we better say, oh, I'm conflicted, I don't know what to do, I don't know which I'm going to be.
Bruce didn't do it like this, Bruce did it this way.
And 20 plus issues of that was just boring at that point, and I'm sure these writers, this feels like such a massive step down from that first 3/4 of Knightfall, and I'm gonna go back to Knightfall again. So that last part where Jean-Paul gets the armor and almost instantaneously goes all violent. I didn't like how quickly that happened, but what I liked even less is that happening quickly and then that being dragged out for another 20 issues, but never in an interesting way. Like, I never felt that there was truly a conflict there. He'd made his decision straight away with what he was going to be, and they should have probably just gone with that, or he'd been a Bruce-like bat and slowly descended into this. But it felt like we've made our decision and we're going to pad this out with stuff that isn't very interesting.
Yeah, as I said, I really liked the Catwoman eco-terrorist bits. I thought that was done well. Obviously the Joker bit, 3 issues, was great. I like, Tom and Tad, and I want them back somewhere else doing something else.
Yeah, they didn't get enough screen time for me. I'd have taken a lot more Tom and Tad in this. They could have been my ventriloquists for this part of the story.
Yeah. And, done something more with them. And I hope that they do come back as in a better Batman pantheon.
Or at least a Tom and Tad special at some point.
Yeah. But yeah, it was like, so the abattoir is Dharma, but they've stretched it out over about 6 or 7 issues.
That was way too long, that part of the story, wasn't it?
You then got the Hawk and Bunny shit that is running at the same time, but you're expected to believe that Bat isn't going to go after Abattoir, who he knows has someone that he is going to kill to eat, to fight a gun nut. The Clayface stuff was pointless.
Art was bad on that as well. That didn't help it, did it?
There was, Marcus, alright idea for a villain of the week, but pointless.
And some of
Tallyman.
those villains of a week weren't villains of a week. They were getting at least 2 issues, weren't they?
Yeah,
And
they
so
were
in
getting
some
2 to
cases,
3
3.
issues. Yeah, and it is. Obviously, I know this isn't the golden age of Batman's or comics as a whole at this point. This is just prior to the speculator boom. But the fact that this goes over Detective Comics, Batman, Shadow of the Bat, Robin, and Catwoman, that's 5 different titles running the same story with completely different art styles, completely different writing styles, and completely different storytelling styles. It's inconsistent and incoherent at times.
Yeah.
And this really suffers. And, you know, as I said, I would quite happily take the Catwoman bit, the Joker bit, have them separately elsewhere, and give them as Bruce. Can I have Bruce being the Bat for these, please? And then they would be so much better than pervy wanker that is John Paul.
Yeah, and like with that kind of pervy wanker side, he lacks. I lack any affinity with him, and I know you don't always have to. Sometimes it is about creating a character that is the antithesis of you, but you understand their motivations. I'm not saying I didn't understand his motivations, but they weren't interesting. And they weren't interested in seeing them just revisited in the same way over and over again.
Yeah.
And you said about Joker and Catwoman, I think part of that is that they're just good characters, aren't they? And I think like the creative teams didn't do anything to negatively impact those good characters. They just told good stories of them, and John Paul is there. And if anything, he detracts from them being on the say on screen on the page for me. I mean, crossovers are a thing, aren't they, in comics? Big events and crossovers are a massive thing, and these were like the breeding grounds of it. These were the huge stuff, you know. In Superman, they're doing the equivalent of this at this point, where you know, the death of Superman, and then the reign of Supermen, and I think they're trying something, but that cohesiveness that you mentioned, like, you'll see this in a lot of events. There's a lot of different creative teams, and they probably know the broad story, and they say, tell something in this, and these are kind of the beats we want to hit. But this feels like it wasn't done very well. It was very loosely, and maybe that's why everything felt so repetitive, because they weren't. So when it's not Chuck Dixon writing it, when it is Alan Grant or Doug Munch, I wonder whether they were told, yeah, you need to, because you can't go off and tell a different Batman story about Bruce, because then people know Bruce comes back, da 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 da.
Yeah.
So we need you to play in this world, but you can't do anything more than what my 2 issues in this 2 months established. So rinse and repeat that for us, please. So I think that's why it was paced so badly. But I mean, maybe the truth of it is that in those other series, from a marketing and from a kind of money making side, this probably wouldn't work. But maybe in those series, you do something different. So in Shadow of the Bat, maybe you tell an old Batman story. In Legends of the Dark Knight, maybe you focus on the villain or something like that, or a detective. You look at the GCPD specifically. But of course, I think they're marketing the crap out of this to say everything Batman is about this. You want to read this, and I don't. I think I would have quit this if it wasn't for us doing this, and we are doing Night's End.
Yeah.
But I think if it wasn't for us doing this, I'd have given up on this about 4 or 5 issues in. And partly that's because the tail end of Knightfall with him is so bland, or so poor, I think. I kind of hope Night's End brings it back, though. Because Night's End, you know, we presume we're going to get Bruce coming back. We presume we're going to get more, and probably more of a focus on Bruce and the journey he goes on to get to the ultimate conflict with Jean Paul, and
take the mantle back.
Well, and probably some Jean Paul as well, but hopefully, as he's not the main focus, maybe having someone else there will make him more interesting, because he's not interesting enough to command whole issues for me.
Yeah, So obviously we came into this initially when we started with Knightfall, going on that this is
One of the, by the way,
held as
for show history, one of the things that got us doing this in the first place, wasn't it? We were
Yes.
chatting on Messenger and we were talking about, you know, we could read some storylines. What are we kind of interested in? What haven't we read? And you'd mentioned like your love of Batman and said that. And I said, do you know what? I know the premise of this, but I never read it. And so it was a real selling point. It's one of the reasons the show exists. So thank
Yeah.
God for it. But
this is the thing. This story arc is held as one of the great Batman story arcs, and so far it's 1/3 a great story arc of watching Bruce Wayne be burnt down and burnt out with wave after wave of villains, whilst them being broken by Bane. And then Dross.
so you saying that reminded me, and I'm an idiot because it was in my notes and it's something I meant to bring up. So where this could have been interesting, and where I think they did some baby steps to it being interesting, is in Knightfall we see Batman go through this atrocious war of trying to get the prisoners back, and you know so much of the focus is his I was gonna say pride, but like pride's probably doing him a disservice. This desire to make sure that everything's put back together again because he has to save everyone, and he gets physically broken, doesn't he? You know, he's tired, he's exhausted, but he still keeps going. He still keeps going, and one of the counterbalancing points, which I think got lost in so much of the dross here, which was actually one of the interesting parts about it, is Jean Paul also doesn't sleep, doesn't have an alter ego, and he says so often about, I'm just out there fighting crime, I'm out there fighting crime. And I think where this could have been interesting, and where I think they almost thought they were being interesting but just didn't hit it, is he didn't physically break, he mentally broke.
Yeah.
And I think there's an interesting story there, isn't there, of going, Bruce physically broke but you could never break him mentally. Jean Paul doesn't get physically broken, but his mind, his spirit isn't strong enough to take this. But they just don't do it well enough. And I think if you were going
I think
into
the struggle is because the Saint Demas Azrael shit. Are we thinking it is just in his head, or whether it's he actually sees these spirits and the spirits are real, or whatever?
Yeah.
There's not a definitive on it, which I think that if you're doing what they were trying to do with showing that he's mentally broken because it's just taken out of him, you need to give a definitive. He's either crazy and seeing them,
Yeah.
or he really is haunted by spirits and that's also fucking with him. They're too much ambiguous, and it doesn't go anywhere. Where with part one, you see Bruce being slowly broken down. You see him being bruised. You see him being taped up. You know the conflict and the battering that he's gone through, and then obviously end up with the broken back and needing surgery. Jean Paul doesn't have that definitive. He's lost it.
Well, I think, and in no way am I defending this because I've told you how poor I thought it was. I think in their head he does. I think he has that conflict. If we get, have a drink for every time we've said conflict in this, and my God, you'll be battered at this point. But
Get
you
on
have
that
that
beers.
conflict. Yeah. Get yourself 10 beerbottles.co.uk. You get that constant conflict, and then you get that bit at the end of that issue where I think for him that is their equivalent of the bat's back being broken. You see him have that breakdown. You know, you see him. He's gone. He isn't. He can't mentally cope with it. But because it's done so poorly, it doesn't have the impact. You know, it doesn't. And as you say, I think it comes across as not that definitive moment. And I feel like probably on a piece of paper, when say Chuck Dixon initially conceived this, or probably in that early conceiving, I wouldn't be shocked if it wasn't physical breaking, mental breaking, and then we're going to thrust them together and maybe explore that. But it isn't done well. It's done beautifully in that first part of Knightfall, and it's done really poorly after that. But maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Maybe I'm reading something into it that wasn't there. But it does feel like that could have been good. One of the big barriers for me though is, why do I care about Jean Paul? You know, he is Batman. Yeah.
There is nothing there to, because even when we still had Bruce being Bat and he was in the background as the errand boy as such, he was a cunt then.
Yeah, and I don't know. I know they probably didn't want to do like Tim Drake because he's got his own Robin series at this point, and they don't want to do anything with Dick Grayson because Dick Grayson's off doing his things, and Jason Todd is dead. Yes, he's dead. But there's probably characters in the Batman mythos that I would have been interested in them. And I know you can always argue about like you'd have to change them and take liberties with them, but I'd have been interested in them doing is the pressure of being Batman only shoulderable by someone like Bruce because anyone else would break.
Yeah.
But then break mentally, you know, like they wouldn't be able to, you know, you're going against the Jokers this world and you're going against these like really heinous villains, and how do you stop yourself from crossing that line? How do you stop yourself from being the bad guy? And ultimately, when you do cross that line, when you do make a decision not to save someone, you're gone.
Yeah.
But I don't. It's less interesting with a character that you haven't established well enough that I care about. And banging bad art and bad bat train designs and bad suit designs, and I'm going, oh, this is just messy, absolutely messy for me in writing and visuals.
Yeah. As I said, these are a set that I own all three of them in book, and
Well,
when they were that thing of
I can imagine one of these sets is going on eBay soon.
No, because I'm a completionist. I need all three.
Let me know, Chris. I'll put the link up on this video of where to your eBay for it.
But it's that thing of like I have dropped 60 quid on this set because they were 20 quid each, and you know, because of, as I said, I had heard that this is one of the masterpiece runs and arcs.
It's not, is it?
It really isn't.
No, and I think you can make an argument for. So even Knightfall at its best, I would say, was very good. Doesn't get to me in the upper echelon of Bat stories, but it's very good. Night's End might win me back round, but I feel like it won't. I think it's going to be better than this, but I don't think it will hit Knightfall standards. So maybe the truth of it is Knightfall might be considered a classic, but Knight's Quest certainly not, and we'll see about Knight's End. Interestingly enough, I was more interested in the one issue of Robin we got and the 2 issues of Catwoman that we got. It's made me want to go and read that Catwoman run, and I'd be interested in reading a bit more of that Robin run. It made me not want to read any more Batman.
But we will.
We will, yeah.
We
What's
will.
to say I'm hopeful? I think there are some rays of hope, because
Bruce
you
is
said about
back.
you said about like 20 quid for this volume. If you were doing that on a pure value of the amount of pages you get for your money, there's a lot of content here. Just unfortunately, it's not good content, so it brings that value proposition down. Whereas Knight's End is the shortest of all of the parts, I believe. Oh, you're joking.
Knight's End is bigger.
It better be
and
bloody good then.
I will have to go through it and actually send you as it is in the book, because I've looked on DC Universe and it definitely not got everything on there.
Well, to be honest though, that might be a blessing. But on the other side, I will also let you know what DC Universe has got, because I'm slightly fearful that they might just miss out in that collected edition a really key chapter again, like how someone goes from being crippled to not crippled.
Yeah. So, as always.
Oh, no, we're not going anywhere yet. I've got some good news for you, boy.
Ooh.
Tom and Tad appear again in the No Man's Land storyline. So there is more Tom and Tad.
Yes!
So I think at some point we'll put that on the list to get our Tom and Tad on at a later date. Yeah.
So if you have read KnightQuest, down there, comments, let us know what you think.
Yeah.
Are we wrong? Or are we right?
Are we the bad guys?
Oh
God! Or are you going into a Jean-Paul kind of? Is it good? Is it bad? Am I good? Am I bad? Am I?
Conflict.
We've lost him. There are two. What did you describe them as earlier?
Entities.
But no, when you said about their colouring, what did you call them?
Oh, like ice cream.
Yeah, there's two blobs of ice cream above you right now.
As we mentioned earlier, and I'll put it down there again in the description bit, 10% off beer at 10bottlesofbeer.co.uk. Support local independent shops. And
If you're planning on
reading
KnightQuest, get some beer in from 10 bottles of beer, because I'm sure it might make it a better experience
it
for
will
you.
definitely be more palatable.
Yeah.
Because we haven't mentioned it yet, we're over 100 subscribers.
We are. Thank you very much. Thanks for all the support.
And we did a very special Rammstein live, which literally got dropped the night that we noticed we'd got to 100, and we were like, it's quick!
It was a beautiful moment of we were recording what we went, oh my God! We hadn't really planned, because we've been kind of watching subscribers, and it was following a pattern. And I think I'd even said to you at the beginning of that recording, I reckon we'll hit that in about 3 or 4 days' time, and then a very short while later we'd hit it.
Yes.
I don't know what we'll do, but I think we'll do something for 250.
Yeah.
So if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed, we'll do something special for 250. So subscribe away, please.
And as always, ring bells, like, subscribe, and also share with your friends.
Yeah.
Let them know that we're here.
Yeah. We're here for them.
And get on the new thing that Sedd's just recently done. Freight Train. We have a new...
Certainly if you're a horror movie fan, like so far only one episode. Looking at 1973's The Wicker Man, but the idea behind it will be over a long period of time. I will film with multiple people, hopefully, but at the moment probably a bit of Lacey and Richard, who's new to our channel, where we'll just look at a specific horror movie, and hopefully we'll stick very much, apart from this episode, to stuff that we like, so that we can kind of go, yeah, this was good and why we liked it. But I'm sure there'll be a few shitters along the way.
Well, I've got two that we've got to do. One.
Have we?
Yeah. One of them is, that great thing that I watched over the Halloweeny period, Aquarium of the Dead.
Okay, I'm happy with this so far. Yeah.
And the second one, because I know you haven't seen it yet, Terrifier.
Yeah. I thought it would be. And of course, we can then do Terrifier 2 as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so it'd be lovely if we, at the very least, I want one of us to love it, because that's part of it, isn't it? We've said this on here, and we do this on our Reacts videos. A lot of this stuff is about bringing stuff to the table that we either wouldn't have experienced any other way, or wouldn't have seen, and hoping that other people love that thing that we love. Now, in all honesty, we don't always, but I will always say this, and for anyone who stayed through this very long outro, one of the things that I really like about doing this, and one of the things that's kept me doing this, is not only the beautiful Chris, but it is even if I bloody hate something, do you know what? It's really nice listening to people talk about stuff they love, because you see that kind of change in them. Like, just people come alive when they're talking about something that they're really keen on. And you know, the dark side of me goes, and then it's really good at the end of that to go, that's shit, wasn't it? but no, Joel side, it is nice. So yeah, if you're watching this and you've never thought about doing this, get in touch with us. We're always happy to have other people kind of get involved and do stuff or help people along the way. But yeah, I would say if you're going to focus on something either you love or at the very least that someone else loves, because it's really nice to talk to people who are passionate about a subject matter.
In that is very true. And until next time, I don't know what we're doing next because we haven't.
No.
We're
We're having a little break before we come back to Night's End, so that certainly is not going to be left. We're going to have some
That'll
palate
probably be next
cleansers.
year. Beginning of next year, that will come out.
It won't be as long a gap as this time,
Yes.
but there will be a bit of a gap. Yeah.
I think it's either a top 5 or a film. We go to the movies for the next one. We will be back with Sandman in the month. With some more Sandman joy. We'll go into
Volume
book 2.
2. Which I should remember the name. I think, is it? I can't remember what the name
Dollhouse.
of Volume 2 is. Yeah, Dollhouse, thank you.
And also, if you've got any Christmassy stuff,
Yes.
you want to get it in early so you know we can get a heads up.
Save us from something akin to the Avengers Halloween special by chucking something Christmassy in here that might be worth reading.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But until next time, remember, save yourself some money on beer with the code down there, and we'll be back next time.